we have in the audience many individuals who would die to have your positions. So could you...
Lots of nights.
Could you share with us your typical day, both in season and off season? And maybe after that, they may have second thoughts.
Why don't you go, George?
I guess I'll start with in season, and I guess for the whole year, there isn't much time off in these jobs. They're all the time jobs. I typically work, every day, all season long, and we'll get a family vacation in late in August. But you're working then as well. We go away for 3 weeks up to Martha's Vineyard, and I get up in the morning and get a workout in, and then work the phones probably until 11 a.m. and then check in the office every hour after that the rest of the day for those 3 weeks. But the rest of the year, you're working every weekend. During the season, you're working all day long, and every other night, basically, you're playing. The off season is busier than in season. In season, there's a certain rhythm to it. Off season, you get some sleep because you're not playing at night, but you're doing a lot of things, whether it's negotiating contracts, preparing for the draft, running your summer camps, dealing with free agency, dealing with salary arbitrations, that sort of thing. So if you want to be in these jobs, they're all the time jobs. And there are times when you can say it's enough, I need a break, but the competitiveness in you doesn't allow for that, and you just find a way to keep going. It's supposed to be fun. I'm not sure how many nights it is, but it's nice to win. We won last night, so today's a good day.
And Kevin?
Yeah, I would agree with George. It's in my case, as I've gotten older, actually, I've understood that it is important to try to compartmentalize some time for myself. So my routine is I work out usually in the morning. I get up and ride a bike or something like that, something pretty hard. And that's probably the only time in the day then until I go to sleep where I'm not intensely focused on the business. Whether it's off season or during the season, I don't think that you get very much time off. And a lot of it is just the personality of people that end up in these jobs is such that even when you do have time off, your brain doesn't stop working. You're still trying to find how you can be just a little bit better than the people you're competing with. So, one thing that's kind of interesting and challenging for me is that I spend less time on the technical side, obviously, than George does. But I have to kind of switch gears and switch hats a number of times during the day between the various business issues and then occasionally some of the higher level technical issues that I have to deal with. And then, of course, on game day, everybody suffers the same. And it is, our team has struggled the last couple of years. Last year we had a terrible year, and we've not really been accustomed to that kind of poor performance. And there are days where you say to yourself, why do I put myself through this? But at the end of the day, you love the competition. And you understand that in competition that sometimes you're going to lose. Winning's a heck of a lot more fun, but you can't kill yourself when you lose because it's going to happen sometimes.
And what prepared you most for your positions? I mean, you've had other jobs, and what do you think it was that excelled you to where you are now?
Well, I think I played the game, played junior hockey in Canada, college hockey, played pro hockey. And I guess there's a presumption that when you're in the position, you know something about the game. But I went to law school after I finished playing pro hockey, and then I worked for 5 years as an assistant GM with Pat Quinn in Vancouver. So that was sort of the foundation for getting this opportunity. And I really think in two regards, it was really helpful. Law school was helpful. Where law school has helped me is actually in hiring people, believe it or not. And I think we've done a fabulous job of hiring people on our staff. They're all very well educated. They're smart. Our capologist is studied economics at Harvard and got a law degree at UCLA and is a real bright guy. And he came up with ways to allow us to add players at the deadline a few days ago that were really brilliant. And I don't know if other teams saw those openings that we did, but we got it done and we made our team better. And then just being in the assistant GM's chair for 5 years, almost everything that I saw there, I saw again when I came to Washington, so I was prepared for anything that sort of came along and had experience in trying to deal with it.
Well, for me, our sport, which is newer on the scene, obviously has been a crusade, a personal crusade. I played the game when I was young. I played in college. I didn't play professionally. There were very few professional opportunities when I was at that age, but I continued to play pretty seriously as an amateur. So my love for the game started really early. I remind people that in 1989, I was running the United States Soccer Federation, and we won a match on November 19th of 1989, the final match of World Cup qualifying away at Trinidad and Tobago to qualify for the World Cup for the first time since 1950. And I remember landing at Kennedy Airport on my way back to our offices in Colorado Springs from Trinidad and buying a New York Times and being over the moon that there was about a 3-column-inch story about the U.S. national team having qualified for its first World Cup in the New York Times. That was only 20 years ago. And today, of course, is an entirely different world for us. The World Cup matches, the final of the World Cup between Univision and ABC had 7.5 million more viewers than the highest game in the World Series. The U.S. games and the final of the World Cup outdrew every NBA final game. So the world has changed dramatically. For me, I started my career helping the sport at the national level, but early on I felt that I wanted to be part of building a league and building a team. And, as a sports fan, growing up, I had ideas of the kinds of teams and the traditions that I wanted to try to emulate. And it's been really fun and extraordinarily rewarding to try to accomplish that in the real world. I'll mention to George that actually one of the teams that I always looked at and thought about in my own mind as a model of what I would love to create was the traditions of the Montreal Canadiens and the way that they not only won, but they won with a style and almost had a regal approach to the game and for a long time existed at really a different level from everybody else in hockey. Not so much anymore, but...
So Detroit's sort of taken over that.
Yeah, and you look at the way those teams do things, and there's a lot you can learn from them and transport that into your own sport.
As you know, the title of this topic is Two Sides of the House. And Kevin, you're on the revenue side, and George, you're on the spending side, as many people refer to. How often do those two sides cross? Kevin, you referred to it a little bit, that sometimes you get involved on the player side. But if you could share a little bit about...
Well, my theory, I don't think there are two different sides. You referred to George on the spending side, but the product, the thing that people spend their money on that they want to see is the team. And I happen to not be a believer in creating a Chinese wall between the business side and the technical side. I think that the two are very intertwined. There obviously have to be some divisions, some practical places where there's a line of demarcation, but I think the best sports teams are the ones where there's a strategy that's established and a philosophy that's established that controls everything that happens in the organization, from the business side to the team side and back. So, you know, when we started our league, I was much more involved on the technical side. But as our league has expanded in size and as our business has grown, I am more involved on the technical side now, sort of strategically setting direction and involved in bigger deals, not on a day-to-day basis to the same extent.
Okay.
The less time I spend with owners and talking about budgets and everything else, the better our team seems to be. And I mean that. Whenever you try to run a hockey team like a business, I think you make mistakes. And I let our capologist and ownership get together, and I try to stay out of those meetings because I'm trying to make hockey decisions. And if you start looking at the dollars too much, you realize how much money you're really spending. And I think you make mistakes. And we went through it in August. I was trying to sign a defenseman for 2 years at $3.5 million a year. It was a little pricey for what he was. And we had just gone over budgets, and I said, well, okay, we'll tough it out and we'll find another way to do this. Well, we found another way to do it 6 weeks into the season, but it cost us $4.5 million for a guy, but we needed a player. And so I really try to just focus on making hockey decisions. I don't want to be bogged down by all this other stuff. And I just talked to our capologist, can we get this in? Does this work? Does this work in the future? And really stick with what I think is the most fun anyway, is trying to make hockey decisions, trying to find talented people and make your team better and let somebody else worry about the money.
Working for an entrepreneurial owner such as Ted Leonsis, how has that been different than your previous job when you were with the assistant as an assistant GM? Do you see any differences between ownership groups?
Oh, sure. Yeah. Well, when I was in Vancouver, it felt like more of a mom and pop operation. The league was smaller, the revenues were smaller, and my boss and I basically did everything. My boss was the president, GM, and coach of the team, and you know, he's wearing 3 hats. And anyway, things have changed. We're a bigger business. We're a global business. And but again, I basically run hockey operations, and that's what I want to focus on, and that's enough to focus on because there's more than enough work there. And while Ted and the rest of the business side do really brilliant things and really have grown our business, we're sold out. Our TV revenues are up, all our revenues are up, and we're on HBO and we're in the Winter Classic and really a neat team to be around. I will only get involved in things if it's affecting what's going on with the hockey team. If they're asking too much of the players in terms of appearances, if too many commercials, if your coach ends up doing bird calls on a commercial, you gotta ask them to not do those anymore. If the person singing the anthem took 4 minutes to sing it and put everybody to sleep, it affects the team. So I just focus on hockey operations and let the experts in the other areas do their thing and hope that it doesn't affect what we're doing on the ice.
Kevin, you brought in a former player as your coach. And what role did you have in that? And is that a smart move? Is it a good marketing move?
Oh, it wasn't a marketing move unless it works, and then it'll be a brilliant marketing move. Our league is different than leagues around the world. We have always had a philosophy at DC United. We have a philosophy and a style, and then the system of play. The coach fits the system into what the players are, but we have certain ways we want to play in general terms, and we looked around the league, and there weren't too many people that were available in the United States that we thought were right for the kind of style we wanted to play. Unfortunately, our league right now is going through a period where everybody is becoming much more defensive, a little bit like when the Devils had all that success with the trap and everybody was trying to play the trapping system in the NHL. And, you know, right now, our teams, a lot of them are playing very defensively. So that's not the way we want to play. We don't think that's the right thing for the business or for the team. And our success in the past has been playing a different way. So we didn't see appropriate candidates in the States. We talked to a couple of people from overseas who were who did adhere to the kind of philosophy we want to try to follow, but they were going to have a huge learning curve about MLS and the restrictions and constraints that are in place here as opposed to what they're accustomed to in Europe. At the end of the day, we felt that Ben Olsen, while he was going to have a learning curve as a coach, we didn't feel that his learning curve as a coach was any steeper than those established coaches' learning curve about DC United and MLS was going to be. So we concluded, and Ben's a pretty remarkable guy. He's very, very intelligent, incredibly hard worker, probably the most ferocious competitor that I've ever been around. And so he's going to figure out the things that he needs to figure out to be successful in the job. He's young. We took a chance, but you know, the red and black of our team is in his heart. It's in his soul, and so I don't have to worry about any of those things. He understands all that, and I think he's going to do great. But it was not a conscious marketing move. But as I said, if it works, it'll be a very smart marketing move.
And is that philosophy top secret, or you want to?
No, it's simply. I mean, those of you who know anything about soccer, you look around the world, and you know there's a lot of teams now that play in a system where they only have one forward. They play numbers behind the ball all the time. It's a big, big field. It's a lot easier to kill the game than it is to make the game. The best team in the world, Barcelona, plays an entirely different approach. Traditionally, our team has played a very high-pressure, attacking style. We want to play in the other team's end of the field. We want to play very high. We have technical players. We want to play fast, and we commit numbers in the attack. And that's not in vogue in our league right now. So that's something that we think is an important part of who we are, and we think that done right, it can be extremely successful and attractive. So that's what we want to do.
And George, you brought up the point about the HBO 24/7 series, and what did you think about that? How did that impact your team? How did it impact you on your day-to-day when the cameras were on 24/7?
I thought it was a fascinating experience, and let's face it, HBO's really good at what they do, and to have the opportunity to have them follow our team for 3 months and really make our team a popular team. As a result of HBO and the Winter Classic, our ratings are up 33%, I think, in our market. We've become enormously popular. As I mentioned earlier, we were selling out anyway, but now it's on a weekend, it's hard to get into our practice facility to watch practice because there were so many people there. But I thought it was a great experience. I thought I did it because I thought it would be great for hockey. And they were worried that I would say no. When we had the big meeting with HBO, all the guys in the league came down, and Ted Leonsis came in, and they thought I was going to be the guy to kill it, because in the past I had killed other things like that because I want to keep the outsiders out and away from the team, and but in this instance I thought I'd seen other things that HBO had done. I saw Hard Knocks in football and saw some of the other program they did, whether it was Band of Brothers or other things. It was just excellent TV, so I thought they'd do a good job. And they really did. They really captured, I think, the essence of our sport. I thought they were going to overplay fighting initially, because when they first came to us, they started interviewing the fighters, and I thought, oh, geez, if it's going to go this way, then that would be unfortunate. But the more time they spent with us, they realized, while fighting happens in hockey, the real thing you admire about the players and their toughness is they play through everything, and they play almost every other night. And Mike Knuble breaks his jaw, and he's playing about a week later, and then they're taking 6 weeks later they're taking the wire out of his jaw, and he's playing, or people are getting stitched up, or people are blocking shots and breaking bones, and they keep playing. And these humble, articulate athletes off the ice are these really intense, competitive, tough guys on the ice. And they're not self-promoters. Anyway, I thought HBO did a great thing of capturing that. And I thought that the way they narrated the program and really the way the things went on the program, we were playing poorly. Pittsburgh was playing great. They had a 10 or 12 on 14 game unbeaten streak. We lost 8 in a row. And then just before the Winter Classic, we started playing better, and we win the game. And the way that HBO dovetailed into the Winter Classic was really probably the most enjoyable experience of my hockey life. Sitting in Pittsburgh, there were 70,000 people there, and the lights are on, and there was just this aura about the game, this sort of field of dreams feeling about it, that we're going to come up with this game and everybody's going to come. And they did, and it was a fascinating experience. I don't know if our players loved it all the time. I don't know if our trainers loved it all the time. There are some things that are disclosed you don't want. There were some points where it reflected poorly on our coach. But I just thought it would be, the bigger deal was it would be great for the game. And this is a year that's really important for the NHL in terms of television, because our national contracts are up. And you have all these entities like Comcast versus NBC are all now one, and you have Fox, and you have ESPN, and we're a hot property right now, and I thought that we had to do this for the league, because if it worked, we're going to get an even bigger deal, and it sounds like we've got a big deal coming, so I don't know if that answers the question, but that was
great.
my impression. And the other thing is, despite what they say about the cameras being around all the time and you get used to them, you know when you're on camera. And some people play to it, some people don't, but you always know when that camera's on you.
Good. Talking about deals, Kevin, where are we with the stadium deal?
Well, we are continuing our conversations in both Baltimore and D.C. Nothing will be happening real imminently in Baltimore because of the structure in Maryland. Maryland has a part-time state legislature, which is only in session in the first quarter of the year. We are not planning to do anything in this session of the Maryland General Assembly. But we do intend to continue our conversations with the city of Baltimore and the Maryland Stadium Authority throughout the ensuing time now, the rest of 2011. In D.C., we have had conversations with the district. They're preliminary in nature, but I think they're moving forward. We're making progress. There's a site that I think we both think makes a lot of sense from an urban planning standpoint. So I'm cautiously optimistic that we'll get things done. We are looking for an opportunity to enter into both a sort of a short-term and a long-term deal with the district. The short-term deal would revise the terms of our relationship at RFK Stadium, which is a challenging place for us in many ways. And then hopefully the long-term solution will be a permanent stadium in an appropriate location so that we can talk to our fans about where we're going to be long-term.
And how did the World Cup, or U.S. not getting the World Cup bid, did that affect you in any way?
I don't think us not getting it affects us. I think had we gotten it, we would have seen a big move forward, particularly in several years. I mean, we weren't talking about that World Cup until 2022. It would have been a huge milestone in the future. D.C. we had worked very hard to position D.C. as a likely location for the final. D.C. would have had probably 6 games, including the final, which is the equivalent of I mean, the final is bigger than the Super Bowl. Well, it's much, much bigger than the Super Bowl. Each of the games would have had a similar economic impact to the Super Bowl. So for the district, it would have been an extraordinary opportunity. But, you know, the game was played on a different field than we were playing on. I was in Zurich for the presentation. I was part of the lobbying team. President Clinton led that presentation, and afterwards he just said, you know, they were playing a different game than we were. You know, the Qataris did deals at the state-to-state level. They helped influence votes through favorable trade agreements with sovereign nations. Our sport happens at a level that no other sport happens at in that regard. So, and I'm not talking about small countries. I'm talking about major industrial powers in Europe where the head of state told their representative to FIFA how they needed to vote because of the implications of the trade agreements and the favorable trade agreements that Qatar was offering on natural gas to their countries. So, I give the Qataris credit. This is something that they really wanted badly, and they figured out how to get it, and they went and got it. I'm sure that we'll bid again for 2026, and I think we'll be the favorites to get it. We were all deeply sorry that we didn't get it, but I don't think it's going to really harm us at all in the long run that we didn't get it.
Well, we're coming into the home stretch of the capital season, and we're just kicking off the soccer season. Any predictions?
No.
Don't want to be quoted on that one. Well, we wish you all the best.
Well, thank you.
And Kevin?
Well, we're gonna be a young team. I know that. We'll likely, once we settle in, we've got a couple injuries right now that might not have our full group starting the season. But I think once our season settles in, and we're going to probably have an average age of our starting group around 22, which is, good and bad. We're going to probably have our ups and downs this year, but I think that we're in a great position to build a core group. And this is something that I admire about the way George has built the Caps now, with a group of people that can mature together and understand what it means to be part of a team and build the kind of chemistry on and off the field or the ice that you need. I think we have an opportunity to do that now. We're even across our entire roster, including a couple of players that are over 30, our average age is under 24. So we're pretty excited about this year, but we're really excited about the future.
And before I turn it over to the audience for questions, just, what is it, your challenge, your opportunity that keeps you up at night, either excited or worried? Anything in particular?
Well, wins and losses, certainly. Potential trades, but it's wins and losses, and making decisions on personnel, whether it's player or staff. I used to be able to sleep well. I don't anymore. It's amazing. Win or lose, I seem to wake up at 3 or 4 and have to go downstairs and do something, turn the TV on to take my mind off of whatever is making it race. It's a fascinating lifestyle because everything else, is secondary. It seems, particularly if things aren't going well. If you're winning, you exhale a little bit. You sort of notice things around you a little bit more, like your kids and your family. But it's you have to make a lot of sacrifices, and I guess you have to be this way to function in this business. But
Totally dedicated.
well, there's no other way to do it, because you won't have success if you don't.
Yeah, I think if you can't relish this, so even the tough stuff that George is talking about, and I'm the same way. I mean, look, last year we had a year that was epic in futility. and the fans suffer with you, but I don't think that they often understand the depth of suffering that the people that are on the inside are undergoing. And it's, with each new loss, it's just devastating. And you start to question everything that you're doing. But in a funny way, in a perverse way, if you can't relish that responsibility, then you can't do a job like this. And you really won't be happy, and you'll end up burning out quickly. So you have to be able to find a strange sort of enjoyment in the good and the bad. And, for us, and I'm sure George feels this way, when, if you win a game or you win a President's Cup, or you win a series, or even eventually when the Caps win the Stanley Cup, you only enjoy that for a little bit. You'll enjoy that for, it seems like 15 minutes, and then you're starting already to think about...
I would enjoy it for a while, I think.
Well, in our case, I remember we had a victory parade in D.C. after one of our championships, and then I had to drive back. All the players went back on a bus to at that time, our facility was out by Dulles Airport, and I had to go back and cut 3 guys. So literally, we went from the greatest part of the job to the worst. Because that, for me, that still is the hardest part, is the decisions that you have to make that negatively affect other people's lives. That's a horrible responsibility to have, and that's even worse than losing for me.
That's it's the part of the job you don't think about much when you take the job. You fantasize about building a team and getting all these good parts and winning championships, but when you have to tell someone they're not good enough to play in the league, or you have to trade someone, or you have to fire a coach or something, that's, boy, I don't think you ever grow up thinking about having to do those things.
Great. Let's go ahead and open it up for questions from the audience then. We have one up front here.
Hi, I'm Jody Graber, and I have a company called Bravo Wellness, and I help high achievers live their best life and sleep better. But I do have a question for you. When you're lucky enough to have someone like Alex Ovechkin on your team, and then the rivalry with the Penguins and Sidney Crosby, how does it affect the other players on your team when there's this, when the media hypes the who's better, Ovechkin or Crosby? And then I did, of course, watch 24/7. I've been a fan of the game. I'd probably date myself if I mentioned how long here. But I was kind of surprised as a fan of the game that there wasn't the handshake at the end of the Winter Classic. So did that have anything to do with the hype of who's better, Crosby or Ovechkin? And then, of course, you guys won the game. I'd love to hear your thoughts.
That particular incident, it didn't surprise me, and it has surprised me the teams shake hands at the end of the Winter Classic. I don't know how that started, but we've had 4 of them now, and this is the first time they didn't shake hands, and it probably had something to do with that this is a bitter rivalry. When those 2 players first came in the league, Ovechkin and Crosby, and there's all this hype about them being Magic and Bird and what they're going to do for the league, I really thought at the time it was contrived and didn't make any sense. But you know what? It's become that, and which is really neat for our game and for them. I don't know that it bothers the other players that much. They play it pretty well and say this guy's great, that guy's great, or our guy's better. But I don't think they care about that part of it a whole lot. But it's interesting. They're not even in our division, but when we play, it's one of the bigger games of the year. And the last time we played Pittsburgh, 10 days ago, I think, in Pittsburgh, that might have been the most intense regular season game I've ever seen. From the minute the puck was dropped till the end of that game, these guys were killing each other. And we had 2 guys break bones in that game, and nobody, you try to keep it quiet. But anyway, it's become this enormous rivalry. And just with respect to the Winter Classic, the real neat thing about that was driving home from it. The experience being there was was really something, and all these Caps jerseys all over. We had close to 30,000 people go to Pittsburgh for the event, which was phenomenal. And one of the football guys there, I don't know if it was Rooney or one of the other guys, said we've never had an event like this, a sports event in Pittsburgh like this, where so many fans came from another city. The neat thing was driving home on Sunday, because my family was up there and we were driving back, and you see all these Caps fans driving back to Washington at the toll booths, at the restaurants, at the gas stations, all these people in Caps jerseys. It was amazing. Took my kids to McDonald's and getting out of the car, and hey, George.
What a great economic impact for Pittsburgh. Even though they lost the game, they won financially, hopefully. So.
Hello, my name is Zachary Mayer, Lock Haven University. Thank you both for coming. Mr. McPhee, you talked about the NHL and the TV deal coming up. Do you have any insight on what may happen? And if you had your way, is there any something that you would want to see done there, like who the TV deal is done with?
Not really. I would say that NBC Comcast Versus is probably. I think they've got the inside track, because Versus, when we came out of the lockout, ESPN wasn't offering very much money for our product, and I thought the league did a real smart thing, and they did this in Canada. Historically in Canada, we had the CBC buy the rights to our games and then sell pieces to the teams and everything else across the country on the national deal. And then TSN cable came along, and you had those. And then Bettman's helped get a third one going up there, which is Sportsnet. And so now you've got 3 entities, and then there was a spin-off of Sportsnet. Now you've got 4 bidding for our rights. So in the U.S., I think he's done the same thing. ESPN didn't want to pay, went to NBC, and then he helped, I can't remember what Versus was called before it was Versus, get going. Now they're doing really well with our product. So now you got more people in the game, and now our game's a pretty good game right now. And so Bettman's really confident this is the year we're going to get a huge deal, and he wouldn't be talking like that if he already knew where he was. And I would just think that NBC Comcast Versus has the inside track, because they were there when ESPN wasn't. But we'll see. And I don't know what it's going to look like, but I think it's time for the league. And I think HBO sort of understands that now, because once they covered our sport, they said, geez, these are really neat guys. This is a great game. And they started talking, maybe we should do a game of the week and that sort of thing. And I know they want to cover the next 4 Winter Classics and do the same thing they did with us. And in fact, the league is going to mandate that if you're selected to play in the Winter Classic, you have to say that you'll also commit to doing the HBO program. It's kind of neat.
One last question, right there.
Hi, I'm Malik Subarao from New York University, and Mr. McPhee, you had mentioned at some point that you look at the hockey decisions and don't bother yourself too much with the dollar decisions. But as an organization, in fact, both the Caps and DC United, how do you strike a balance between the objective of maximizing wins or maximizing the number of Stanley Cups, as opposed to the objective of maximizing revenue and reducing costs, because those two don't go hand in hand all the time?
Well, I'm not trying to be flippant, but I'd like our team to win, to make money and everything else, but I'd rather win. It's not my money. And ownership will decide how much they can bear, how much they can lose, how much they want to make. I don't think they're in it to make money. They could do other things to do that, and they sure have. But the town wants a winner. I want to win, and I just in my experience, when I get too focused on budgets and everything else, I start saying, okay, well, maybe we can do without this guy. I like this guy. I think he helps our team, but maybe we'll go with a younger guy. But when you go with younger guys, as Kevin's going to learn this year, there's a big difference between promise and reality. And what you want are good players, but with some experience, and he's undergoing something where they're going to grow up together. But anyway, I want good players and I want experienced players. And I inserted some young guys in our lineup this year, and we're going to do it again next year. But maybe that's why there's a little dip in our performance, because it's usually the experienced guys that help you to win. But the bottom line is, you know, if ownership doesn't like the way I'm doing things, they're going to get somebody else. But I'm just trying to win. And they might come in at a certain point and say, geez, we can't do this, we can't do that. That's fine. But again, in my experience, I have to focus on building a good team and not worry so much about the dollars. And other people may do it different, but I want to take away all the clutter. I want to focus on hockey decisions and this hockey player and this coach and what we're doing as a team, and let other people worry about all the other things that don't really matter to me.
Lisa, I would say, I mean, the questioner actually used the right word, which is balance. The best marketing, everybody on the business side wants to think they're a brilliant marketer. And I remember sending an email to Tim McDermott when he was responsible for a lot of the business operations at the Caps after they drafted Ovechkin, and I said, congratulations, you just became a much smarter marketer. You know, the Caps are a really hot item today because they do a lot of things well off the ice, and Ted's brilliant at making, at creating a welcoming environment for the fans. But the biggest reason that they're a hot product today is because the team is very, very, very good and has been good for several years. So smart owners, and there aren't any that are smarter than Ted, understand that having a great product and having a team that wins consistently is the best possible way to create the marketing topspin you need to create real demand and real momentum that moves forward and starts to, there's almost a law of inertia. It starts to develop its own forward movement. And so I admire what the Caps have done in recent years. And that's something, you know, we're trying to recapture that. But certainly we've seen it in reverse. We came off a period where we won the league championship and then we won the league regular season 3 times out of 4 years, and we were averaging over 20,000 people a game. And then the last 3 years we missed the playoffs and our attendance is down. So there's a direct correlation, and you can be the smartest marketer in the world, but if your team's no good, you know, there's an old story about the dog food company whose sales were down, and the sales manager says, you know, why are our sales down? We've got the best research, we've got the best packaging, we've got the best sales force. Why are our sales way down? And somebody puts their hand up and says, the dogs won't eat this stuff. And if the dogs don't want to eat the stuff, it doesn't matter how good a salesman you are. So that's the bottom line in my view.
Can I just make one comment? When I'm talking about I don't want to get involved with budgets and everything else, it doesn't mean that we haven't done a great job, because we have. And I don't spend money recklessly. We don't have any bad contracts on our books. We don't have any contracts that are getting in the way of us being a good team. We don't have dead money. We've done it. And one of the reasons we are a good team is because we're getting value for the players we've signed. And you know, the biggest issue in a cap system is having dead money, and we have none. So we're doing a good job. I just don't want to deal with it.
Well, I want to thank you both for being here and also
Thank
for
you.
leading our professional sports teams here in Washington, D.C.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.